All right. Hi, and welcome to our Pardot 2021 What You Need to Know webinar. Thank you for taking time out of your busy day to join us. We're happy to have you all here. Over the next 40 to 60 minutes, a few of our consultants will be covering some of the key changes that Pardot admins will need to know about for 2021. Welcome again, and let's get started. There are some big changes coming to Pardot in 2021. During this workshop, we will cover most of them. This session is focused on the technical changes. We have left out a deep dive into the new email builder on purpose, as you'll still be able to continue using the current email builder in 2021. We want to make sure we cover the changes that will impact how you use Pardot, and we won't be covering all the changes. However, we do encourage you to stay current on the Pardot release notes. So what I will do here is provide a link to the release notes on this slide, and I will share these in the chat as well. So I recommend bookmarking this and keeping up to date on the new releases for Pardot. And I just sent that link in the chat, so you have access to that there. So what are the major changes? First, Pardot only login is going away. All users will need to log into Pardot with a Salesforce account. Your users will still be able to log in directly at pi.pardot.com, but they'll need a Salesforce license. Jermaine will be up first to discuss these changes and how to prepare. Next, connected campaigns. As more features become available between Salesforce and Pardot, the campaign object has become the hub. By enabling this feature, you'll be able to take advantage of all the newer features and releases coming from Pardot. Finally, Pardot tracking code and enhancements for web integrations. There are big changes coming with the way Pardot will work with the public web. We'll share how to navigate these changes, including what it means to enable SSL certificates in Pardot, updates to the Pardot tracking code, and other enhancements you'll need to know about how Pardot works with the web. So first up, we've got Jermaine Brewer, who will be talking about the Pardot user sync.
Thank you, Liz, and thank you everyone for joining. I'm Jermaine Brewer, and I'm a certified Pardot consultant at Cypress Learning Solutions. I implement Pardot for customers as well as provide training workshops to teach them how to use the platform. And today I'll be going over the new Pardot user sync. So what is changing? Beginning on February 15, 2021, and coinciding with the Spring 21 release, Pardot's user authentication system will be discontinued and all users will be required to use single sign-on. All Pardot users not enabled with Salesforce single sign-on will lose the ability to log into Pardot until they are connected to a Salesforce user. And so why is it changing? Basically security. So security is the primary drive of this change. Trust is Salesforce's #1 value, and user security is a key part of that. By requiring that all users access Pardot via Salesforce single sign-on, Pardot can eliminate its own user authentication system and consolidate all customers onto Salesforce's robust and extensible user security system. The majority of users accessing Pardot today are already using Salesforce single sign-on, but we want all customers using Salesforce single sign-on so that everyone can take advantage of Salesforce's security features that aren't available in Pardot today. Features like custom password policies, login hours, and a multi-factor authentication system that is far more customizable than what Pardot offers today. And so what is the solution? To support customers with Pardot-only users who do not need a Sales Cloud or Service Cloud license, Pardot has bundled 100 Salesforce identity licenses into all customers' Salesforce org. These licenses can be issued to users in place of a full Sales or Service Cloud license. Users with an identity license will access Pardot from the standalone Pardot application at pi.pardot.com and use the login with Salesforce button to authenticate. The Salesforce identity license allows Salesforce users to access external applications like Pardot standalone application while giving administrators control over authentication and authorizations for these users. Pardot recommends that all users have a Sales Cloud or Service Cloud license to take advantage of all that Pardot has to offer. These identity licenses are being offered as a way to transition remaining Pardot only users over to Salesforce at no additional cost. And here's just a recap of the upcoming changes. We'll also share the Salesforce help article and the webinar chat so you can view at your own leisure. All right, so here are some questions that I get asked very regularly. One question is, will this change increase the cost of using Pardot? So no, Pardot will not require all users have one of these licenses to continue using Pardot. 100 Salesforce identity license has already been bundled into your Salesforce org. How should I use the identity license? Pardot recommends that all users have a Sales Cloud or Service Cloud license to take advantage of all that Pardot has to offer. These identity licenses are being offered as a way to transition remaining Pardot only users over to Salesforce at no cost. Now, with that being said, these licenses are not really intended to be given to someone new that need access to Pardot. It is just mainly for those existing Pardot only users. Next question, is Pardot moving to a seat-based pricing model? No. Pardot's pricing will continue to be based on contact database size. Is the standalone Pardot app being discontinued? Answer is no. Pardot encourages all users to migrate to the Pardot Lightning app, but the standalone Pardot app will still be available. Last question on this slide is, how can I verify that the identity licenses were added to my org? Well, if you navigate to the company information page in your Salesforce setup, the user's license table will show a license named identity, and it will list the number of available and used licenses you have in your Salesforce org. All right, next slide, we have, can users with an identity license be upgraded to a full Sales Cloud or Service Cloud license? Yes. However, a Salesforce user assigned a Sales or Service Cloud license cannot be downgraded to an identity license. Can users with an identity license access the Pardot Lightning app? No. Identity licenses are only intended to provide access to systems outside of Sales Cloud or Service Cloud. So going back to my point earlier, these licenses are not really intended for new users that need access to Salesforce or Pardot, just basically for the transitioning the Pardot only users you currently have. Will this change require me to enable Salesforce user sync? No. Pardot encourages customers to enable user sync, but it's not required. Will users who are not enabled with Salesforce single sign-on by the Spring 21 release permanently lose access to Pardot? Users who are not enabled with Salesforce single sign-on will lose their ability to log into Pardot until an administrator links their Pardot user to a Salesforce user and enables single sign-on. But no, users will not permanently lose access to Pardot. And the last question, will I be able to assign prospects to a user with an identity license? Yes. However, users with an identity license cannot access leads or contacts in Salesforce. So Pardot recommends that all sales users have a Sales Cloud or Service Cloud license before any prospects are assigned to them. And so now I will show you how to actually enable the Salesforce side user management and add your users. So first thing you want to do is go into your connector settings in Pardot and then go to the user sync tab. First thing you want to make sure is you've mapped your Salesforce profiles over to the Pardot role. So if you see here an example, you have your Salesforce profiles listed on the left. You want to make sure on the right-hand side that you're mapping it to the corresponding Pardot role. And then next, we want to go in the back end of Salesforce. So you go into Salesforce setup. In the quick find in the upper left-hand corner, you will type in Pardot, and then you will click on the Pardot account setup tab. Then next to your Pardot admin, you click on manage users. And then in the middle, you will select edit user assignments. And then next slide. And this is where you would go add your users. So on the left-hand side, you have your available members column. You would just select their name. Once it's highlighted, you would click the add button in the middle, and then they will get added as selected members. Two things I wanted to point out here. If you look at the red arrow at the top, it says users in this group inherit the Pardot role map to their profile in the user sync settings. So if you add them as a marketing user, Pardot will automatically map them to the correct role that you have set in your user sync settings. If you look at the bottom red arrow, if you add them as sales users, then anyone in that group will inherit the Pardot sales role. So just kind of keep that in mind when you're adding your users here. And then next, there will be a save button. And then you will go back into Pardot, go back to your connector settings where we started, and there'll be a green button that says get started. You click there, and then this pop-up will come up, and it will give you the option to opt in. And that is all you have to do. But just keep in mind on this pop-up, it's saying once you opt in, you cannot opt out. This change is irreversible. So just keep that in mind that once you opt in, it can't be changed. So again, thank you everyone for joining. I hope this was helpful, and back to you, Liz.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Jermaine. That was a lot of great information. Next up, we've got Jordan Krisman, who will be talking about connected campaigns.
Hi, I'm Jordan Krisman, and I'm a certified Pardot consultant at Cypress Learning. I lead client workshops and implementations. Now, I'll be speaking about connected campaigns, what they are, and how they interface within Salesforce. We'll also be going over the benefits to using them. Then I'm going to quickly review how campaign management is changing and things you must consider before implementing connected campaigns. So what are connected campaigns? While they're both referred to as campaigns, there was no direct relationship between Salesforce campaigns and Pardot campaigns. Pardot campaigns answer the question of what brought prospects to you. They track the first touch of a prospect with one of your marketing assets, whether it was from a site page visit, an organic search, or a landing page form submission, for example. On the other hand, Salesforce campaigns have been used to track activities that influence your leads and contacts to purchase from you. They can be used to track multiple touches along the buyer's journey. In the past, to see the full picture of your campaign success, you would have to refer to Pardot's campaign reports, and you'd also have to go into Salesforce to see the results of your Salesforce campaigns. Now, connected campaigns simplify this process. They establish a one-to-one relationship between Salesforce campaigns and Pardot campaigns. And by connecting these two, campaigns can now be managed in one platform, Salesforce. And this is going to streamline your entire campaign management process. Lastly, connected campaigns are going to improve your campaign reporting by combining the best of both worlds. Pardot campaign metrics will now appear in Salesforce campaign records. In the screenshot above, you can see an example of how these Pardot campaign metrics will appear on a Salesforce campaign page layout. You'll see things like email, open, and click-through rates, form submission rates, and marketing link clicks. Now, what are the benefits of using connected campaigns? Firstly, the most obvious benefits are simplifying how campaigns in both systems are created and how they communicate. Since they are now aligned, connected campaigns are simply created in Salesforce. A corresponding Pardot campaign is automatically created and tied to it. As Pardot campaigns receive data and track prospect activity, those metrics are fed into the Salesforce campaign. Second, Salesforce users and sales teams can now see how many landing page views, form submissions, email opens, and clicks are received by your marketing efforts. These engagement metrics are now on the campaign page layout. Now, the third benefit is that you can track Pardot assets directly in Salesforce. These include landing pages, marketing forms, list emails, and marketing links. And one of the fourth main benefits is now you get access to engagement history dashboards. These dashboards are going to appear on the page layouts for campaigns, accounts, leads, contacts, and opportunities. And now we have some engagement history dashboards that I had just mentioned. On the left, you're going to see the dashboard on the account page layout. This allows you to track prospects and activities at the account level for all of your account-based marketing campaigns. On your right, you're going to see Pardot asset activity displayed on a graph on the campaign page layout. In both examples, you can filter by activity date, asset type, and activity type to drill down to the metrics that you need. Pardot campaign management, what's changing? So in the old way, before we had connected campaigns, Pardot campaigns were created and managed in Pardot, totally separate from Salesforce campaigns. We could still use automation rules and completion actions to send prospects to Salesforce campaigns. But now with connected campaigns, we don't need to go to our Pardot campaigns to create or manage them. And in the new way, Pardot campaigns are still going to exist. They're just controlled by Salesforce campaigns. Pardot campaigns will continue functioning in Pardot the same way they always have. The difference being they are created and managed in Salesforce and no longer separately in Pardot. With this newly created special one-to-one relationship between Pardot and Salesforce campaigns, Pardot is now able to send more campaign performance level data into Salesforce. This allows you to leverage Pardot campaign performance metrics within Salesforce and take advantage of all the Salesforce reporting tools, as you can see pictured above on this slide. Now, because Pardot campaigns aren't being removed, we're still going to have access to all of our existing Pardot reports, such as sales velocity and campaign ROI reporting. But remember that the Pardot reports leverage a first touch attribution model only. Some considerations for using these connected campaigns. This feature needs to be enabled by an admin in the Salesforce connector settings in Pardot. The connected campaigns can only be controlled by record type. This allows you to control which Salesforce campaigns are synced with Pardot. And once they're enabled, your Pardot campaigns become read-only. They still exist, but they're managed from Salesforce campaigns. And when a Salesforce campaign connects to a Pardot campaign, Salesforce replaces the value of the following Pardot campaign fields: name, archive date, cost, created by, updated by, and updated at. And this is just something to keep in mind in regards to Pardot campaigns when connecting them to Salesforce.
Thank you, Jordan. That was incredibly informative. Finally, I'll pass it over to Brandon Walton to talk about the Pardot tracking code, SSL, email bot detection, and API changes.
Thank you, Liz, and thanks everyone for sticking with us to this point. My name is Brandon Walton. I'm also one of the consultants here at Cypress and the resident Pardot nerd. So happy to talk to you for the next little bit about changes that are coming to the tracking code, best practices around SSL, some exciting stuff about bot detection that they've recently rolled out, and big changes to the API that align with some of the things that Jermaine was talking about. So let's jump right into it, Liz. All right, awesome. So if you log into Pardot regularly, you're probably seeing a lot of these kinds of messages pop up on your main Pardot dashboard. So like Jermaine covered, beginning in February 15th, the user authentication is going to be discontinued. This is going to impact not only how your users access and log into the platform, but also how things like the API works. And by API, maybe you guys are developers on this call that are building out your own API integrations. They'll definitely impact that. More commonly, you might be using a tool that leverages the Pardot API, things like Zapier, Tray, IO, stuff like that. That'll allow you to have external systems making updates to Pardot. So there are some big changes, and let's jump through and talk about those. All right, so first let's talk about the JavaScript. So the old flavor, the old version of the Pardot JavaScript is what we see here in this screenshot. And what's happening is this is going to now be considered a third party. So what happened with this JavaScript is Pardot has a server that they use to track clicks and engagement on things like your website. And every time that JavaScript would get pinged or get used, it would make a call into a pi.pardot server. So now if your website is cypresslearning.com and the server, the JavaScript is calling Pardot, that's going to now be considered by Chrome and most major browsers as a third-party tracking tool, which means that it's just going to stop working. The browser is going to block it. They're doing this to enhance things like security. So if you're looking at the script down here below, you've got the script type JavaScript, you've got the Pardot account ID, the Pardot campaign ID, and it's just referencing a Pardot code. But now the new one, we'll take a look at the next slide here. Pardot has done some JavaScript magic to allow it to be viewed as a first-party tracking code. So if you look at the way that the new tracking code works, is it gets associated with one of your tracking domains inside of Pardot. So in the example here, we're using info.cypresslearning.com. So we could be able to use this tracking code on any of our cypresslearning.com sites. Now it's all based off of what's called a top level domain or a TLD. So it doesn't matter if you have blog.cypresslearning, store.cypresslearning, info, go, whatever. As long as the cypresslearning.com piece is a match, the browsers are going to treat it as a first party tracking code. And you can see what they've done in the code here is they've added a third line underneath those two PI account and campaign, and that third one is called host name. So if you are looking to track different domains inside of your Pardot account, what you'll do is you'll set up the different tracker domains for each of the websites that you want to track. So we might also use cypresslearning.academy, and we would have a separate tracker domain, and then any code that we wanted to implement on the Academy side, we'd have to make sure that we come into Pardot and generate a tracking code. So what'll happen is it still pings Pardot on the back end, but it uses that CNAME relationship, that CNAME record it has, to allow the web browser to treat that this code as a first party. So you can see down there below on the S source equals PI hostname, which is going to be your site, which means that Chrome, I think Firefox, those kinds of browsers are all going to start treating it as a first party tracking and continue allowing it to work without implicitly having a user accept that third party tracking code. One of the other things that just was released this week actually is the temporary deprecation of the Pardot autofill. So Pardot autofill is a feature that you can enable. It's autofill by IP address. And what it'll do is the system will be able to determine where an IP address is from. So it'll be able to understand, oh, this is Brandon. He's pinging us from Austin, Texas. And then it'll automatically fill Brandon's record with the city and state information. Due to some changes in just security and security best practices, they're turning off that functionality. You'll want to take this into consideration if you are using this feature and you have things like workflows or automation rules set up around things like city and state being populated, because those as of this week are no longer working. I believe it's something that they're working on and they're looking into vendors to replace this, but as of right now, there's no return date for when they'll be able to turn this feature back on. So be aware of this, particularly if you are using this autofill feature inside of Pardot today. And then next, so going along the lines of our tracking code generator, another important thing is Browsers are also taking security more importantly. So SSL, or Secure Socket Layer, is a certificate that allows information sent back and forth from your user's web browser and your machine or the Pardot machine to be encrypted when they're transferring between the website and Pardot, for example. So what Pardot does is actually pretty cool, is they actually give you an SSL certificate. You don't have to buy it, you don't have to pay anything additional. But when you're doing that authentication with your domain inside of Pardot, so you're adding the tracker domain, one of the options you'll have is to enable SSL. So what we're recommending people do is enable the SSL and then default to HTTPS. Here's what's going to happen. When a browser detects something that's mixed content, so let's say cypresslearning.com is an HTTPS secured site, but on that site I have a Pardot form in that site and I am not using the secure method, I'm just using an HTTP protocol. What'll happen is where that browser is supposed to appear, where that form is supposed to appear, it'll just be empty. That's going to be a big impact for marketers who have Pardot forms that aren't secure. All your Pardot forms are just going to show a big blank space. So what you'll want to do is make sure that you're using the HTTPS protocol, implement this SSL status, and then what you'll see anytime that you're copying a Pardot custom redirect URL, or you're uploading a Pardot file like an image or a PDF, or you're uploading a Pardot form. If it's HTTPS, you should have the option there. Same thing with a form handler. Then you'll be good to go. So what you'll want to do as a marketer is make sure that you're going back on all of your existing content that might be out there on the web that is on an HTTPS site, and make sure that you are using the secure SSL version of it. Otherwise, what will happen, and I've already seen this happen to people already, where your Pardot form once was, it'll just be empty, and that's actually the browser blocking what they're perceiving as an insecure form or photo or element from your users. So this is an important one to make sure that you're implementing correctly. Go ahead and jump to the next slide. So one of the other really nice good news enhancements is email bot detection is getting smarter. So Pardot is implementing a thing called metrics guard for email. A few years ago, if you've been using Pardot for some time, you know that the idea of threat detection tools have become more and more popular. And what threat detection tools basically do is if you're sending an email to Brandon at Cypress Learning or Liz at Cypress Learning, for example, and we have email threat detection turned on, it'll be a little tool that will open up the email before it gets to us, click on every link, just make sure that nothing is a virus or nothing is considered a threat to the organization, and then it'll send it forward to the intended mailbox. Now, what ended up happening for a lot of people a couple of years ago when this stuff became more widely spread is you would have a one-click unsubscribe page. So at the bottom of the email, click here to unsubscribe. You've been unsubscribed automatically. Well, you had these bot detection tools that would click all of those links, unsubscribe a bunch of people, and then when you would follow up with, if I'm working with Liz, hey, Liz, I noticed you unsubscribed from my email. Well, Liz says I never received the email. That's because these bot tools are going in and clicking all of those links and unsubscribing folks. So what we did to fix that back then was we switched that over to what is called a email preference center instead inside of Pardot, something that you may be familiar with. And what this email preference center is it's a landing page that requires the recipient of the email to go and actually pick and choose what lists they want to subscribe or unsubscribe from, or they can still unsubscribe. Inside of Pardot, you have the option to use the one-click unsubscribe or the email preference center. So for the last couple of years, we've been advising folks to always use the email preference center, just because that email threat detection thing could be a bit of a pain. One of the things that Pardot did is if they were able to detect known IP addresses, they would filter those out and no longer count those as clicks. One of the other impacts actually would be as a marketer, you have a completion action inside of Pardot anytime someone clicked on an email. So we send an email out, hey, Liz, this is great. Look at all the responsiveness we're getting. So our sales team starts following up with all the emails going up. And then, the recipients of those emails are like, I never clicked on an email. I don't know what you're talking about. So Pardot added these filters so it would no longer track those links and clicks. And then, like all games of cat and mouse, these systems got smarter. They're now cloud-based, which means those IP addresses are rotational. So what this advanced metrics guard does is it takes a little bit more of a behavioral approach to it. So if you send an email out and as soon as that email gets sent, it notices there's a click on every link in your email within a second of the email being sent, it's able to say, okay, we don't think that's a real person clicking, and so it'll opt that out. So a really cool feature. What's nice about this is there's no action required. They're just rolling this out for people to make it smarter. I'm a bit of a skeptic, so I'm still going to continue using that email preference center, but I'm really excited about this just to make sure that those false positives and clicks get cleaned up and we're able to send better information, better insights to sales teams. All right, so Pardot API connection. Going alongside the Pardot login user being deprecated, the way that we authenticate the Pardot API is changing as well. So what they're changing to is actually using a Salesforce access token. To Jermaine's point earlier in this session, it is a more secure method. Right now, if you're using Pardot with like Zapier, for example, you put in the Pardot username, the Pardot password, it generates an API key. What we've been doing for years and years and years and years and years is creating a special integration user. So if you had Zapier, you would have like Brandon plus Zapier at Cypress Learning with its own special login to Pardot, and then you would authenticate through that user. Well, that's all going away. So the way that we're authenticating now is through a Salesforce access token. And that includes a client secret, a client ID. That's all generated on the Salesforce side. Now, unless you're a developer, this probably isn't going to impact you as much. But what we'll want to take note of as end users, as marketers, is we are picking maybe additional vendors that we have working with Pardot. You'll definitely want to make sure any purchase that you're looking to make that offers a Pardot add-on or extension is going to be leveraging this, because come February 15, any integration will no longer work. You'll get an unauthentication or an authentication issue. So something to be aware of definitely as an admin. If you are using current external systems, like if you are using Zapier, Tray.io, Driftmail, or SwiftRock, things like that, chatbot tools that are connecting with Pardot, make sure that you work with your vendor. They should all be aware at this point, but one of the things that you want to prepare for if you're using those external services. And here's a fun one. So something that kind of uses the external services that we have seen come up is WordPress. So a couple of months ago, they upgraded the WordPress plugin to version 1.50. And what they added was an option to authenticate from the Salesforce SSO authentication. So the WordPress integration is one of these great examples of for forever. We would create a special user inside of Pardot. It would be the WordPress integration user. We'd authenticate to that. So anything that was done between WordPress and Salesforce, or WordPress and Pardot, sorry, would come through as this integration user. So they've added the SSO authentication a few months ago, along with some other improvements, but it did come with some caveats that we've learned recently. So go ahead and move to the next slide and cover what some of those are. All right, so one of those is what we have here on the left-hand side is what the new version looks like when you have it installed. So you can see the key thing is we are authenticated with SSO. We're connecting that through Salesforce, no longer through the Pardot user. The authentication type is SSO. And what you're going to get to make this connection work is a consumer key and a consumer secret. So there's a process that you go through with setting up a connected app on the Salesforce side. It's a little bit different. There's more steps to it, but the intention is that it is more secure the way that it authenticates through. And then you'll add your Pardot business unit. So just a small change that you'll need to make. And the other thing is they also announced that they no longer provide support from the WordPress plugin. So if you go to that wordpress.org/plugin Pardot URL and you're asking questions there, don't expect to get any responses from there. What you're going to want to do is submit a ticket directly to Pardot instead, because they're no longer going to be monitoring that like they used to. And another fun one, we'll go to the next slide. Another fun one that we saw. Another fun one, I've seen this in fact impact newer accounts. I have not heard from folks who have had this plugin installed for a while that this has impacted it, but some folks who we have set up more recently, we become aware of this. Pay attention to the underneath the install Pardot WordPress plugin. This is an update that took us by surprise. And it says your WordPress org admin must install the Pardot plugin. The WordPress plugin is only available for Pardot editions with API access. So Pardot API access, as you know, is something that you get with Plus and above. If you're on Growth, it's a feature that you don't have. So one of the things that we noticed, it took us by surprise, is that for someone who just gets Pardot right now and they go to install this plugin, they get a little error message that says API needs to be enabled in your Pardot account in order for this to work. Now, we have brought this up to Salesforce. We brought up the confusion, and our understanding is that they'll be releasing Pardot API edition in the future. I'll preface that with a safe harbor. I don't know when that's going to come. I don't know what the exact timeline is, but if this is something that you haven't installed yet, or you start seeing issues with your WordPress plugin, this is one of the things that you definitely want to be aware of. Now, there are ways to work around. At the high level, what the WordPress plugin does is a few things. One, it installs that Pardot tracking code on every page on your WordPress site. There are other ways to do this. Google Tag Manager is probably one of my favorite tools for doing this. A few years ago when GDPR was a big thing, Google Tag Manager was a savior, because on Google Tag Manager, you can add your Pardot code there, and then you can set what that trigger is. And so what we did for a ton of accounts back then was only have the Pardot code fire after someone clicked the button to accept the cookies. So a best practice would be to use a Google Tag Manager instead of a WordPress plugin. The other thing that the WordPress plugin did was allow you to embed your Pardot forms and things like dynamic content with one of those WordPress shortcodes. So, you know, the curly bracket form.id, whatever. A workaround for that is you can just embed your Pardot forms using the iframe method, and it works the exact same way as that plugin would work. So if this does impact you, I would recommend taking a look at using Google Tag Manager and then just embedding your Pardot forms directly from Pardot into Google. So fun stuff, but all things that we can work around. And then again, we look forward to getting future releases from Salesforce about releasing Pardot API access to everyone, which would be awesome. So next slide. And I think that's all I have. So I'll kick it back over to you, Liz.
Yeah, I think that is. Well, thank you so much, Brandon. And thank you to Jermaine and Jordan as well. That was a lot of great information, all things Pardot 2021, what you need to know. Now, before we say goodbye, we just wanted to share a little bit of information on who we are. Cypress Learning, we are a registered Salesforce partner, and we specialize specifically in Sales Cloud, Service Cloud, as well as Pardot. So we wanted to share just a little bit of information, again, on who we are, and if you do have any training needs or service needs, how we typically work with our customers. All right. So what is a Cypress workshop? So the way that we typically engage with our customers is via a Cypress workshop. And what is that? That is essentially a 1-hour session with a Pardot consultant. So with a Brandon or with a Jordan or with a Jermaine. And that time is used to focus on what is important to you. So these workshops are fully customizable. We want to use this time in a way that's going to benefit you the most. What we've included on the screen here are examples of typical workshop topics. And again, this is focused on this slide a bit more on Pardot, but we also offer workshops focused on Salesforce. If I'm talking about Pardot though, we may use a workshop to focus on something like segmentation management, or admin and user training. Or maybe we want help and a better understanding of building out assets within Pardot. So very often we do workshops to focus on building out email templates or landing page templates or forms. So again, the takeaway of Cypress Workshop, this is fully customizable and fully tailored to you, your organization, and whatever needs that you have. Workshops can be used either one-off, or we also offer these really great consulting success packages. And so what we're looking at here is just a framework, a guide of how we typically see customers using workshops. For example, the first 5 workshops, we refer to this as our Jumpstart Success Package. And this is focused most often on things like email templates, landing pages, list segmentation, and so on. From there, as we continue to add on additional workshops, we're going to dive deeper into really building out this solution. What was the driving factor behind why your organization brought on Pardot? What were you looking to get out of Pardot and marketing automation? We're going to work with you throughout the remainder of the workshops, throughout the remaining 10, 15, 20 workshops, to make sure that Pardot is matching ultimately your business goals and your business process. In addition, we also offer a monthly Pardot Admin Bootcamp. So if you are the main user in Pardot and you are the Pardot admin, but maybe you don't feel 100% comfortable within Pardot, you don't understand everything that you have access to and how you accomplish certain things within the platform, this could be a really great option for you. Our 2-day bootcamp is 2 days, 10 hours, 5 hours each day, really focused on those things that a Pardot admin should know and should be comfortable doing within the platform. So you'll see kind of an outline of the bootcamp curriculum. We're going to focus on things like the Salesforce integration, some administrative aspects. Just for example, the recycle bin. How do we use the recycle bin? How does it work? How does it function? Are we able to remove things from the recycle bin and bring them back into our platform? So you'll see the list kind of goes on here. Lead qualification, list management. Again, this is designed to essentially set you up to be a Pardot Power user. There are different documents provided as a part of this course. This includes the training workbook. So during the bootcamp, we are going to do several exercises within the platform. First, the instructor will demo a certain exercise and then provide ample time for you to complete that same exercise within the platform as well. I'll also mention that during the bootcamp, we have a Q&A panel up and ready to go within the Zoom webinar. So throughout the course, you're able to ask questions, any concerns that you have, and we're going to answer those as we're working our way through the course. It also includes a Pardot glossary, so terms that you should know as a Pardot admin, as well as a study guide. And this is an additional resource to set you up for success when it comes to taking that exam. And the exam that I'm referring to is the exam to become certified as a Pardot specialist. The course outcomes, this is what you make of it. So I mentioned how we do those demos and those exercises throughout the boot camp. By doing those exercises, by staying engaged, asking questions, participating in the quizzes that, yes, we have quizzes throughout the course to stay entertained and engaged. But as you engage, the more you engage, the more you are going to be prepared to become a Pardot super user, and the more prepared you will be for that Pardot specialist certification exam. So that is all the information that we had prepared to share with you today. I will say, if you have any questions on anything that came up during the presentation today, if you are in need of services for Pardot, for Salesforce, if you're interested in that bootcamp, please reach out to me. I'm more than happy to answer any questions you might have, to work with you. You'll see my email address on the screen here. That's liz@cypresslearning.com. And I look forward to hopefully hearing from you. Thank you, everyone, so much for your time today.